I want to give you all, I'm going to share my story about domestic violence. But before I do, because you know that looking at that kind of got me a little teary-eyed, okay? So why don't you just turn to the person next to you, look at the person next to you, and just say, "You look wonderful. You look wonderful." Amen. All right. Now, I think this is amazing. This event is truly amazing. Now, I do not know everybody's name on the board and all of the staff and everything, but I think what Pastor Duran is doing is extreme. I mean, I am blown away by it. I met Lisa, who is phenomenal. I met Maureen, who I is not going to be my BFF forever. I met, I met Jan. I did not grow up with a dad. I don't know what it is to have a father figure in my life, but God has blessed me to have four women that have passed through my life that has been mother figures to me. You just saw my biological mother, but one of my mothers is here tonight, and I just want to acknowledge her, Joan. That's my mother. Amen. All right. Now, I hope you're not going to have to listen too clearly because I'm from the Caribbean in Trinidad, so I do have an accent, okay? So if I start to talk fast and my, my accent kind of, just listen carefully, okay? All right. So I was born in Trinidad. My dad left our country, Trinidad, when I was just 2 months old. My mom got involved with another guy, and she got pregnant for him. He did not like the fact that I was another man's child, so I was abused really bad. Some of it I can remember, some of it I don't remember, but even though it happened between the ages of 1 to 5, I can remember some of it. And one of the main issues that a lot of people don't understand is that they think children don't remember and they think that they'll be all right. They're a child, they'll forget about it. But believe me when I tell you, it does not happen. Children are like sponges and they remember things that you don't think they will. Okay? So it's very, very important what you do, what you say in front of kids. Now, the one thing that I remember, like if it was yesterday, was my mom went out and she walked back in the house the exact moment to see her boyfriend kick me in my stomach and bang my head against the wall. She jumped on him. He ran in the kitchen, got what we call in the Caribbean a cutlass, but they call it in the United States a big machete, and started to beat my mom really bad with it. Right after that, my mother left, and she moved to the northern part of our country. She got a job and she had our 28-year-old cousin. She left him to babysit us. And during the times, many times while my mom was at work, he would sexually molest us and would tell me that if I was to ever say anything, I'm going to kill your mother. And because of what I saw my mother just went through, I was so scared as a 6-year-old to say anything. So I kept it a secret. My mother got married when I was 8 years old. And as a child, I suffered really, really bad with asthma. I was in and out of the hospital all the time. So one night at around 8 years old, I was having a really bad asthma attack. And I went to my mother's room to say, I can't breathe. I'm really ill. So she was getting up to come see about me. So her husband said, oh, leave him alone. He'll be fine. My mom said, look, my child is having an asthma attack. I need to go take care of him. When she tried to get up off the bed, my mom had really long hair, so he grabbed her by her hair and pulled her down on the bed and started to beat her really bad. And there I am, can't breathe, having an asthma attack and watching my mother being beaten really bad and screaming my lungs out. So of course she left him. And I vowed from that day, I'm going to protect my mother and my sister from anybody that would ever try to hurt them. So I went and I joined, at age 12, I went to join martial arts because my goal was when I reach about 20, I'll be really, really good at martial arts and I was going to find her husband and beat him within an inch of his life. That was my plan. But I became a Christian at age 15. So my plans went out the door. Somewhat. Because in 2010, I went down to Trinidad to visit and I was praying, God, I just want to slap him one time, Lord. But I never saw him. But anyway, in 1996, I migrated to the United States. My sister had a son for a guy, we liked the guy, he was a nice guy to her, but they were not, in a relationship per se. So I left her in Trinidad with my mom and I came to the United States in 1996. Then she tells us she's involved with this guy. And my mom calls me and tells me that he is hitting her. And I was like, I wanted to fly back down to Trinidad so bad because, I still had a lot of little friends that was, little thugs and so on. One day my mom was in our living room and she heard a big commotion in our backyard. When she went to the backyard, she saw the guy standing over my sister with a belt, beating her. My mom screamed at him to leave my child alone and decided she was going to go call the police. He started walking while my mom was going in the house. By the way, my house in Trinidad that my mother and my sister was living in, that I was paying the bills for them in Trinidad. This man does not live in my house, does not pay bills in my house, but he's walking behind my mother in my house, cursing at my mother because she's going to call the police. My sister gets up and says, Mom, it's okay, I'll deal with it, I'll handle it. And continues to see him. So one day she was going to the clinic. Well, my mom went ahead nevertheless and got a restraining order on him. One day my sister my sister had a daughter for him. So she now has 2 kids. She was going to take her daughter to the clinic and he saw her on her way to the clinic, went up to her in the streets and said, my daughter's birthday is going to be in the next 2 or 3 months. I'm coming to see my child. And if anybody try to stop me from seeing my child, I'm going to kill them. And then he spits in my sister's face in the street. So my sister calls me that night, crying, frightened. And I said, look, I have no intentions of going back to Trinidad to live. You just sell everything out in my apartment, and I'm sending a ticket for you to come to Trinidad because this guy is now threatening your life. So I moved my sister up to New York to live with me. A few months later, I saw her going out on a date with this guy that lived in the building next door. And I'm like, what in the world are you doing going out with that boy? Do you have any idea who he is? My sister always felt that I was a little too judgmental and that I don't give people chances. That's not true. I actually do give people a lot of chances, but I do know my limits, okay? But I was very vocal with how I felt about her dating him. So she started to keep it a secret. One day I was on vacation to Las Vegas, and when I came back home from Las Vegas, I saw her with a black mark on the side of her face, and I was like, what's that? She was like, nothing. I was like, what's that? Nothing. I kind of suspected, but I left it alone. When my sister died, she hid a whole lot of the stuff that was going on from us, so I did not know the extent of the abuse until after she was dead. Because my sister was in a domestic violence shelter, and in New York, in order to go to the domestic violence shelter, you have to write a deposition of why you need to be there. So after we were cleaning up all of her stuff, and I saw this deposition, I was literally freaking out. In her deposition, she said, when she first told him she was pregnant at 3 months, he choked her to the point where she blacked out, and the next thing she remembered was that he was standing up over her laughing. She didn't leave. She continued in the relationship. At 6 months pregnant, they had an argument. He choked her again to the point where she blacked out again. Because you see, my sister was really light skinned, so he was trying not to leave no evidence. So he used to pull her hair and choke her. And so when she got to herself, he was standing up over her again, laughing, saying, "You see what you made me do?" At 8 months pregnant, he came to her apartment one day and told her, "Go make me something to eat." And she was not really feeling well. She said, "I'm really not feeling well." She's now 8 months pregnant. So, "I'm not feeling well." And then her best friend calls her, and he was watching television, and he said to her, "Look, you're making too much of noise. Go to the bedroom." So she goes to the bedroom to talk to her friend. Then he comes in behind her and says, "You're so disrespectful. You're so disrespectful. You're leaving me here all by myself." And then he starts to choke her and slap her up, grabs her phone and throws it out the window. Once again, she passes out. And when she revived, that was when she finally decided to go call the police and make a report. And that's how she ended up in the shelter. I had no clue about all of that. She was in the shelter for about a year and 6 months, around there. When she came out of the shelter, I told her, "Come back home to my house," because I still had my apartment in New York. And about a month after, he came back to her and said how sorry he was. "My God, I will never do it again. I just don't know what was wrong with me. I'm just so sorry." And my sister decided to start back dating him. Listen, when anybody tells you they're not going to do it again, please run in the next direction as fast as you can. Because if they abuse you once, if they disrespect you once, they're going to keep doing it again. Okay? Now, so a couple weeks after she started back dating him, they had another argument. And true to form, true to himself, he hit her up again. And that's when she decided, "You know what? I'm done with this." But this time she was really adamant. She decided she was going to rededicate her life back to the Lord. She started going back to church. She had the girls active in church, but he would not leave her alone. He kept calling her all hours of the morning, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And if she didn't pick up the phone, he would leave a bunch of threatening messages on her phone. In the last 2 months of her life, he was relentless in pursuing her and told her, "If you don't get back with me, I'm going to," by this time I was now living in Greensboro, North Carolina. He said to her, "If you don't get back with me, I'm going to find your mother and your brother in Greensboro, and I will kill them, and I will kill your family." She was adamant. She said, "I'm done. I don't want to have anything to do with you." So on September the 18th, 2013, my sister left work. She was working as a nurse's aide. She left work. She picked up the 2 girls from her friend who was keeping them for her after school. They were 15 and 5 years old at the time. When she got to the apartment, he was outside. He picked up the 5-year-old, because of course that was his child, picked her up, gave her a hug and a kiss, and as they were going into the apartment, he said to the kids, "Look, here's $8. I want you all to go to the corner store to get some chicken because we're all going to have dinner tonight as a family." So the kids left to go to the corner store to get the chicken. He went inside of the apartment with my sister, shot her 3 times in her body, and as she laid lifeless on the floor, pointed the gun to the back of her head and shot her 3 more times at the back of her head. And then he ran. A few minutes later, the 2 babies came back from the corner store to find their mother in a pool of blood, dead on the floor. I was in Ventura the night that it happened, at my mother's house, my Ventura mama's house. I immediately had to fly out from California, fly my mom from Greensboro to New York. And the moment we got to New York, we were bombarded by the media because he was now missing and the search was on for him. I don't ever flaunt my title, Dr. Gonzalez. Listen, you call me Kurt, I'm fine by that. I couldn't care less. On my birth certificate, it says Kurt Gonzalez, and I'm fine by anybody calling me Kurt. But that week, that period of time when he was missing, I was determined, come what may, I was going to find this two-legged creature. And I used my title. Oh boy, yes, I was calling this is Dr. Gonzalez. All right. I made my title work for me. So I got parental custody of the girls, took them back to North Carolina. They're now 18 and 8 years old. The 8-year-old I recently got permanent adoption. Well, I adopted her permanently and legally as my own. The 18-year-old just finished her, completed 1 year of college. But I'm sure the question in everybody's mind is, so what happened to the guy? Well, I told you all I stayed in the media, right? And I was calling everybody because I was going to find him, right? So the police got a tip 1 week later that his family was hiding him upstate New York. And when they went to get him, he started shooting out at the police. That lasted almost 2 hours. Then he shot his own self twice in the stomach. And he died 3 days later in the hospital. So he's now dead. Hey, people have asked me how I felt about it. Well, my question to that was, I think God was more anxious to get a hold of him than I was. Okay. But here's the thing. The World Health Organization has said that domestic violence is a worldwide epidemic. It's an epidemic. I'm a Christian psychologist. And in my counseling practice, I meet people from all walks of life. I do not only meet people outside of the church, but I have a lot of people that I counsel in the church. And I have people coming to me that are members of churches that serve in the church. Women coming to me telling me about the abuse that they are getting from their husbands who also serves in the church. I do not have regular members of the church, but I also have ministers that come to me. And yes, I have a first lady right now that I'm dealing with, a first lady who is the pastor's wife that I'm counseling because of the abuse that she has gone through for the last year by the hands of her husband, the pastor. It is not an epidemic that only affects non-Christians, but it affects Christians as well. So what can we do about it? Just like in Soul Winners, they tell you each one can reach one. One by one, we can spread the word. It is unacceptable. Here's the thing. A lot of people think that it is okay as long as I'm not being hit physically, as long as it's not physical, it's okay. So a lot of women and men accept the verbal, the mental, and the emotional abuse. But it is just as bad as the physical abuse. I don't know how many of you have ever had anybody tell you something that was really hurtful years ago, and to this day you still remember. And every time you think about what that person tells you, it hurts. So it is just as bad, the verbal, the mental, and the emotional abuse. And it is something that is unacceptable. And now each one of us can go out and talk up to somebody in the hopes that we can save a community. Is that okay? All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next year.